And on this land,
I
call my home.
I call my home.
Through these hills,
where
I roam,
I
hear a voice.
I hear a voice deep in my bones. I ain't a stranger no more.
And on this
And
land,
on this land,
I call my home.
Through
these
hills,
where I roam, I hear a voice
deep in my bones.
Welcome to the 237th episode of Ear to the Ground, the Land Stewardship Project's podcast on family farming, sustainable agriculture, local food systems, and local democracy. I'm Elizabeth Makarewicz, a sometimes producer for Ear to the Ground and staff member of the Land Stewardship Project's membership program, and I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. Why am I announcing my pronouns and those of my guests? In short, out of respect for gender diversity. Please visit mypronouns.org to learn more. In this episode of Ear to the Ground, I'm taking us back to warmer times. A gorgeous late August weekend in the hills of northeast Iowa on farmland cooperatively stewarded by Hannah Breckbill and Emily Fagan. These 40 acres are special for a number of reasons, not least of which are the events of this particular weekend in late August. Maybe you heard from Hannah in episode 227 of Ear to the Ground, talking about community-led efforts that went into transforming 22 acres of land destined for a CAFO into a worker-owned cooperative diversified farm in Decorah, Iowa. If you hadn't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, let me fill you in. Since arriving to this land 3 years ago, Hannah and Emily have been working to grow vegetables, livestock, a burgeoning orchard, and community. 100% of Humble Hands Harvest produce stays in the local community. The two invite residents from Decorah and the surrounding area to attend monthly workdays and potlucks during the growing season to learn more about the land that nourishes them. It's the kind of community where neighbors stop by to check in and say hello, where someone is always available to help chase down an errant sheep, and where opportunities for singing are abundant. It's the kind of community Hannah always dreamt of, yet she still felt something was missing. Inextricable from Hannah's identity as a community-minded, sustainable farmer is her queerness. While she felt held and affirmed by her community and other aspects of her identity, she didn't feel the same sense of camaraderie around being queer. She craved the kind of queer community found in big cities, but sorely lacking in rural areas. And it turns out she wasn't the only one. In this episode, you'll hear from Hannah, who uses she, her pronouns, and the 4 other organizers of the Queer Farmer Convergence. Jack Whippler, or Jacqueline, uses she, they pronouns and is a sociology PhD candidate at UW-Madison researching lesbian and queer sustainable farmers in the Midwest. Ren Olive uses they, them pronouns and is passionate about supporting farmers and making sustainable, radical change in the food system. Ren currently works with the University of Minnesota Extension Regional Sustainable Development Partnership. Archer Meyer uses they, them pronouns and is a beginning farmer on the East Coast. Marlo Stein, who uses she, her pronouns, is also a beginning farmer on the East Coast. In the organizers' own words, the QFC is a gathering to build community among queer farmers and to reflect on and interrupt racist, capitalist, and heteropatriarchal legacies in U.S. agriculture. It also works to build community among queer farmers as an antidote to the isolation that many of us experience in our daily lives. Tune into this conversation with the organizers to learn more. The following audio was recorded on the original homelands of the Sauk, Meskwaki, Lakota, and Ho-Chunk people. To learn more about the indigenous people who once stewarded your farmland or the land where you live, visit native-land.ca to visit an interactive map.
One time when I was just feeling very lonely and very like I have great community, but it's not quite the right community or something. Anyway, I was weeping about it to a friend on the phone, and she said, Hannah, what you need is other queer farmers around you. So we're going to make this happen. we're gonna find other queer farmers for you to be around. And so she made an Instagram page and kind of collected queer farmers, and then we made it happen. And Jack came on board that first year and helped it happen, helped it get organized, and so we just basically opened up this space, this farm, to a weekend of kind of exploring what it means to be a queer farmer and exploring justice issues in the context of agriculture and queerness. That was the origin.
How did it feel? How did that first convergence feel for you, like, after it was done?
It felt totally great. It was a very stressful thing because it rained and was very cold the whole time, but the warm fuzzy feelings totally made up for it. Everyone was so game for what the weather was throwing at us, and
I thought you were just gonna say everyone was so gay.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So it was it felt really good. And in the lead up this year to this year's thing, we've been having a very hard-hitting summer work-wise. We've just been at it, and then we also were preparing meals for 70 people or whatever, and so it was wait, this is insane, what are we doing? But just a couple of days ago, both Emily and I were wow, we're pretty badass for doing this thing. So that also feels good to be wow, we can do a really big thing right here, just with us.
Cool. And then a question for everyone. I really like the question Marlo asked earlier about how you see the intersection of queerness and farming. It was a very fruitful conversation between my partner and I, and I'm curious what all you organizers think about those two things.
And farming have taught me an immense amount about having a body and being a human with a physical form in space. Farming asks a certain amount of being physically present and showing up in your body because you need to lift something very heavy, or you need to do this repetitive task of harvesting beans, and just really existing in that moment in your body. And that's been a really powerful thing for me also and having a history of a really fraught relationship with my body at different points in my life. But farming as a way to feel really connected to my whole self and to the environment around me, and just in a really grounding.
I would echo that. As a researcher, maybe I'd have a slightly different answer, but me as a human, Jack, there is farming and queerness have always been intricately tied together for me. And I went to the school where Animal House was based on, so that was not necessarily the norm. And once I started having that connection to the food that I was growing and eating that food, that's when it was the world switched from black and white to color vision, that I was oh, I'm a Jew. And 8 years later, I'm still researching queer farmers. So there's a lot more I could say about all that research, but for me personally, queerness and farming entered my life at the same time because of this deep bodily embodied aspect that Archer spoke to.
I think for me, when I was reflecting on this question, a lot of the work I do in ag, I call myself farm support staff. I work for the University of Minnesota Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships on the Sustainable Ag and Food Systems team. And so when I think about queerness and farming, I think about like farming in the margins and making things work in a system that's broken. And as a queer person, as a trans, non-binary person, like there's something that's just like it clicks into place when looking at our system and looking at sustainable ag, and making that change, both like for me transitioning and for agriculture, pushing the needle towards sustainable ag. And I guess that's a whole nother conversation about what is sustainable ag, but I think the two pair really well together, like chocolate chip cookies and milk.
Yeah. Yeah, I like thinking about queerness and agriculture as both embodied, and the one thing that I think about them is also in terms of relationship. Like farming is all about relationship and how you relate to what's going on in the world around you and how you respond to it and how you harness it or slow it down or whatever you need to do to make it to work together with it well. And queerness is about relationship and finding ways to be in relationship that might not be standard or might not be what's expected of you. Yeah, so I think about that a lot, and then for some reason, for whatever reason it is, I'm constantly also thinking about climate change and how the way we do agriculture has to shift into this more relational way, and how queerness brings so much like expert. Yeah.
Do you want to say more about the expertise?
Yeah, let me think. I feel like I want to say like well, first of all, so much of the conversation about climate change is about like carbon emissions and like science stuff, and it doesn't think about, or like we're too afraid to address the fact that climate change is caused by the way humans are relating to the world, and so when I think about like relationship, like humans have been relating to the world in this way that is causing climate change for a long time, and like it desperately has to change, and the people who are most practiced in breaking open what it means to relate are queer people oftentimes, or like, yeah, how to relate in ways that work well for me and for my partner, which might be the earth or might be a person or whatever it is, might be a piece of land. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm used to like verbally responding to like things that people say as they're saying them. I'm like learning not to do that because it makes the recording hard to edit. Right. But yes, I agree with everything you guys are saying. It's all really exciting stuff. Keeping it really simple. I mean, what's your hope for the weekend? I guess either answer that question or maybe like how you came, like why did you decide to come help out with this event?
I met Hannah several years ago at a farming conference where I put up flyers that said seeking lesbian farmers in really big letters, and underneath in smaller print said for sociological research, and at the bottom had a little tear off with my number on it. And Hannah called me, and I ended up going to her farm in Minnesota and weeding for 7 hours and getting one of the worst lower back sunburns I've ever had in my life, because that's what happens. And at that point, I remember Hannah talking to me and saying, and it's a quote that I use in some of my papers, but it was very poignant, of saying, my queer community is not my farming community is not my queer community, along those lines, and really talking about how Hannah was working farming on a property owned by straight farmers at farmers market, or they're straight farmers, so experiencing, and that I was hearing over and over again as I was spending time and visiting people. So when Hannah talked about wanting to do this thing to bring queer farmers together, I was living in Australia at the time and was like, cool, hand up, I will help you. Because again, when I went to go spend time on farms, a lot of what the farmers were asking me was, well, who else do you know? And what do they do? And, oh, that's really interesting. Well, do you think maybe? And it was queer farmers so much wanting to have these connections with other people and have that sense of solidarity and have people that they can talk farming with really intensely, but not getting maybe stuck up in those baseline, like, do you understand me? Do you see me? Are you going to be, concerned about who my partners and partnerships may be and the polyamorous queer relationship I'm in, that we can just talk farming and not be distracted? Mm-hmm. So for me, I wanted to support Hannah's vision, and I wanted other queer farmers like Hannah who were deeply wanting these connections to be able to have it. And basically anything Hannah does, I kind of jump on board with, and we joke around about how Hannah's the visioner, and then I get a little bit into the nitty-gritty over-planning details, but it seems to work out decently. Okay. So that's how I got into it, and my hope is that just people get out of this weekend what they want, and I think some of that is putting in what they want as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, secret, not secret anymore. Hope for the weekend is to find someone for our cooperative. So,
can you talk about your cooperative?
Yeah. So, Emily and I started farming together in 2017, and we started as like very much a business partnership. We are also second cousins, so we have like a little bit of family history. We had met each other like 5 times before, whatever. But in the process of figuring out how to work together, how to share a business together, it's really fun. It's very queer because we have to figure out a different way of relating than like conventional business models. So my goal in inviting Emily into the business was so that I wouldn't have to hire an employee. I'm like very willing to share responsibility and reward. So yeah, I didn't want an employee. I wanted a partner, someone to be equally invested in that. And Emily definitely was ready for that, which is great. And so at this point, the farm has kind of grown, and we see a lot more potential for it. But we definitely can't. We can't do it without more people who are also willing to invest their time and like financial energy and all of that stuff. And vision. So that's what we're excited about in the next few years is kind of amassing those people to be able to take this 22 acres to like where it can go. Yeah.
Seeking farming partner, mm-hmm. either here at the conference or in
anywhere.
Podcast land. Putting out the wishes.
Totally. Yeah, we could use an orchardist. We could use someone who's passionate about poultry. We could use someone who is really excited about on-farm food stuff. Anything.
To plug the farm, there's a 5-year-old child here today that said, "I love Iowa. I never want to leave."
Mm-hmm. It really is a magical place.
Iowa.
Iowa.
Yeah.
Iowa. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. Okay.
Please make that be the intro. And
Please a big round.
Yes. We could record that separately.
Yep.
Can I make sure? I want to definitely hear from you, Archer, because you came last year, which was mine and Hannah's like first year of trying this thing that neither of us have any qualifications for on paper.
Right.
But we're enthusiastic and we try hard, and you came and decided to get very involved and help plan this entire year and took on the workshops and have done such an amazing job making this year possible. So I kind of want to hear your answer to this question.
Yeah.
And what that goes into, like, workshop planning, too.
Totally. Yeah, so I was an attendee last year. Like, I feel like I signed up not at the last minute, but like near-ish to the last minute that I could sign up to come. Like, I didn't really know much about it. I didn't even really... I was like also farming at the time, and so like wasn't super on my email, and just like it's like, yeah, there's this thing that's gonna happen in Iowa. I'm gonna go to it. Like, I'm taking a day off of work. It's gonna be awesome. And yeah, it was super awesome, and it was super amorphous last year, which like I feel like was absolutely what it needed to be. And like the people that showed up like totally created the space. We all got to have a ton of feelings and a ton of thoughts, and just like it felt like a really big moment of like, wow, we can be queer and farm and be together, and just like we kind of all like melted into that for a weekend. It also was raining, so like that helped with the melting process. Yeah, and I feel like just like sharing in that community was such a powerful thing, and I left being like, this is infinite. Like, this could be anything that we want. Like, we could totally take like another amorphous route where like we do the unconference thing and we show up and like don't know what we're gonna do, and or we could like try to do more like set things. And I felt really excited about the idea of like a little bit more structure, because I feel like that was kind of what people left being like, this would have been kind of nice if like maybe if we like had some workshops that we had decided on, and like had time for skill shares that people were bringing in, like that were prepared. And so like knowing that, I was like, oh, like doing workshops could be a really exciting role, because that was pretty directly asked for by people who were at the conference, and was something that I also like felt really invested in personally. Yeah, so we just like put out a call to anyone who was interested with the theme of queerness and farming / agriculture / land-based whatever, and got back some like really exciting proposals for people who just like have visions in their head that are very varied, which makes sense because we're all coming from really different places with farming and with queerness. And so ultimately it wasn't that difficult of a process, because people already had these really exciting ideas that they were coming with. So mostly just facilitating, making sure that they were definitely committed, because that was also an issue for last summers, that people had said that they were going to bring things and then ended up not coming or not actually being prepared to do those things.
Or something. It was Jack or Hannah. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I do for part of my job, is like connecting people with and like figuring out who needs what and how to get that to them, in terms of like grant management and project management. And I like this fits well with the mission of my job and both personal wants, so it's like a great opportunity to be able to answer people's emails and needs like when they would arise, and not be restricted in that, and be able to spend time helping and giving back. And so what I ended up doing is connecting and taking on some of the travel and then sleeping arrangements, so like tents and sleeping bag needs, and keeping that, like building on what Jack had done the first year, and like some of the emails that were sent out and spreadsheets and things like that, And then the really like cool yet challenging thing was that there were people coming from so many different directions and so many different states. And I was like trying to wrap my mind around how to connect people for ride shares when, like, you know, not everyone was coming from Wisconsin or Minnesota or Iowa. And so what I ended up doing is making a Google map of all the registrants at the time from the cities that they said that they were in or coming from, and uploading that spreadsheet into a Google map and plotting people out by where, or they're kind of like geeky into it, like visual representing real life, and hearing their stories and everything. It's been great, and those connections are really priceless.
Just do a quick energy check if anyone needs to duck out and go to sleep or like go talk to other people.
I just went to pee.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can step out at any time. Marlo, do you want to chat a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. So what are the questions that what did we talk through so far? We asked your amazing question about how you view the intersection of farming and queerness. Is that your question, Hannah? Yeah. That was a good one. Have you thought about that question much? And do you have a answer you'd like to share?
Yeah. I think for me, both things of queerness and farming really come down to community building and the ways that I think a lot about the ways that I show care. And farming for me is a lot about showing care to the land and myself and my community. And I think the ways that I think about queerness is really similar in the ways that I show care for myself in fully embracing identities and showing up really fully, and also doing that the same for others, and queering the ways that we're in. And so I think those two things really intersect, because the ways that we can show relationship in farming and in our relationship to land are also, when you're looking at it through a queer framework, can be really complicated and beautiful and really different than the ways in white, heteropatriarchal American culture we've thought about them. Yeah.
Awesome. And then my other question was around like what your hope for the weekend is, and or how you came to become involved with the organizing.
Really moved by the connections and the conversations that happened here in really spontaneous ways. That was definitely the biggest highlight for me, was those moments of being sparked by something and seeing that being sparked in other people and getting to converge around that. And I felt really excited about the momentum that was built, and it's obviously really hard when a group is really spread out to continue that momentum past it. And so I got really excited about what it was building to, and then it felt like it quieted down and people were really spread out, and I really wanted to be involved in the re-energizing of that momentum, and have felt that just the doubling in size and the ways that the word has gotten out and the ways that communities have really been built, and also different queer gatherings have happened around the country. It feels like there's a lot of really exciting and energizing momentum in that. And so I feel really excited about the connections that will be built here this weekend, and the ways that we've been able to structure this weekend really based on those intimate connections that can happen within a big group. And so I feel excited to hold their own momentum from this weekend.
Last question I'm going to ask tonight is about where you see the QFC in 10 years. Just like imagine. I don't know if you'd like thought that far ahead. But, yeah. Take a minute. Though also the way that you speak, Marlo, is great for editing purposes. So you're very slow.
Thinking about
and
my
don't use filler language.
Yeah, it's very intentional.
It's great.
Well, okay, so when I think of the QFC in 10 years, I have no idea. But you know, there are a bunch of thoughts that I've had about the QFC. Why are we doing this? The need in 10 years might be very different. Certainly in my life, it will probably be very different. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. I definitely noticed this earlier when we opened up registration, being like, why is this happening in the summer? This shouldn't happen in the summer. I can't go. So thinking about like what's something that's accessible to people who are stuck on farms is a question that I have. But I love hosting events like this. It's so exciting to have so many people come to the farm, you know, and our farm is not fancy in any way for hosting people, but we do have porta potties and we got a tent and, you know, yeah, anyway, those are some thoughts.
Cool.
I've really liked imagining, Hannah has brought up a lot in our planning, the ways that this could spread out regionally, especially because this year is a lot more geographically diverse than last year, and that can be really hard to be accessible. And I feel really excited thinking about the ways that this is going to birth other projects throughout the country, and that those communities and dream and vision. But I feel really excited about the ways that this will just continue to build new queer communities so that people don't have to travel extensive distances to be in queer farming community.
It would be really neat to make like a blueprint kind of thing of what's worked and what hasn't, and not like as a this is how the QFC needs to be done, but like to enable that regional approach. And yeah, I was talking with in one of our like smaller group activities this evening, how I had wanted to bring a physical map of the United States and have folks pinpoint like their names. So like not only it's on a computer screen, but people could interact with each other. And a farmer was like, I can draw that. I was like, that would be great. And so like to connect those people, and so like thinking about 10 years out, could the people that are here in the regions be the next leaders? Like, can we grow them to spread the movement? So I'm like, your question brought all these. Well, we could, if we had these two people over here, and I know these two people over here. I mean, you could be the northeast region. We have a pretty solid, like, southwest too. Yeah.
Creating like a guide for an instructional guide for certain regional
so
QFCs.
Like, yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking, I printed out the zine from last year that was made. Thanks to our university printers, in color, which I think is fun, and watching some folks read through it this evening. And so like maybe a couple pages in the zine could be like, hey, here's what the planning team did or something.
Totally. And I have a book recommendation that I keep talking about whenever the QFC comes up, because I read this book like a month before the first QFC, and it totally like gave me, like, empowered me to lead a really great gathering. The book is called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, and it's so good. and it tells you all about how to hold a gathering using generous authority and all this stuff, and it's great. So highly recommended. Listen to it or watch it.
What's generous authority?
Generous authority is like you make rules and you like tell people what to do, but your hosting is generous. It's in service to the people who are at the gathering. It's not for yourself. So authority for yourself is no fun for anyone who comes to the gathering. And generosity without like authority and boundaries is also just too nebulous. So, yep.
The question was around what does the QFC look like in 10 years?
Did everyone else answer?
And then popcorning. And it's the last question that I'm going to ask tonight. So.
I'm thinking a lot about an intergenerational queer farming convergence that will be really possible in 10 years after all of us have been going for 10 consecutive years, obviously. And like, there's a kid here this year, and that's so cool. And like in 10 years, my kid will be here. And like, imagining a space where like we get to collaborate around farming and around queerness and around the history of both of those things and how they've worked together in really specific moments in time, because 10 years will be a very different moment in time than it is now. And I envision there still being a need for a queer farmer convergence in 10 years, though I know it will look very different, as farming will look different and climate will look different and queerness will look different. And just having people of all different ages and experiences to collaborate is a really incredible thought.
I would be really excited about there being a bunch of regional convergences and then having like a national queer farmer convergence that's really like a convergence of all these different groups. And I think in 10 years I would love to be, professor, head of some center that can like fund this and facilitate this and really put the institutional backing. Not necessarily we need institutional, I like how grassroots it is, but to do something on a larger level, that if we want to have like multiple breakout conferences and stuff, to figure out where can we do that, how can we make it possible, how can we still have the support that Hannah wants and needs in this local Midwestern community, and have some larger, like, gosh, international. I have Aussie farmer, queer farmer friends. Like, I want that. I want that, like, really big thing, too. Because, gosh, how many, like, farmer conferences do we go to? And it's just the same people and the same stuff, and nothing changed. Like, I just really want to have the conference that we all want.
Speaking from experience, winter can be an isolating time for farmers. Without the daily grind of farm chores, our minds wander and start looking for more. If you're a queer farmer looking for community, here are a couple opportunities. Join the Queer Farmer Network Google group by emailing one of the moderators at humblehandsharvest, all one word, @gmail.com, or Jacqueline Whippler @gmail.com. That's spelled out JACLYN.WYPLER @gmail.com. If you're planning to attend Moses 2020, the Midwest Organic Farming Conference, come socialize with other queer farmers this coming Friday, February 28th from 7 to 8 p.m. in Room H. Find Queers in the Field at Moses 2020 on Facebook to RSVP. And for you East Coasters, on February 29th, Out in the Open in Brattleboro, Vermont is co-hosting with other farmers from Vermont and Massachusetts the next Northeast Queer Farmer Alliance gathering from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Check out Out in the Open's Facebook page for more details. Lastly, the Queer Farmer Convergence is on again this year. Join us at Humble Hands Harvest September 5th through the 7th, 2020. Stay tuned to Convergence website, humblehandsharvest.com/queer-farmer-convergence for details on how to get signed up. This podcast would not be possible without the support of Land Stewardship Project members. Please help support this work and join LSP with a financial contribution that feels generous to you. Visit landstewardshipproject.org to learn more.